Hello everybody, CJ here. Today we are going to be taking another peek into the world of Exodus once more to be introduced to the Feng. Before we start, I would like to say that nothing is final within Project Exodus. Things are most likely going to change and improve, and some parts of the story will also change and develop. Talking about development, let's talk about the things that I've changed since the last time we talked. I've changed the map of Exodus and changed some regions. Originally, the map of Exodus had 7 regions: Brohelia, Maltera, Palasia, Walistan, Guoling, Eden, and Terraskaya. I'll go more into depth of these regions in a future video, but to sum them up, Brohelia was a desert climate whose culture is inspired by Mexico. Maltera is another desert climate whose culture resembles that of Wild West cowboys. Palasia is a tropical climate with culture and lifestyle surrounding Vietnam, Indonesia, and the Philippines. Walistan is half desert, half tropical climate with a culture inspired by India. Guoling is a cold and snowy climate with some parts of it being temperate. Guoling's culture is inspired by China and Japan. Eden is an island whose culture is inspired by Hawaii, and Terraskaya, the final region, is a cold South Pole whose culture is inspired by the Victorian era. As you can see, each of these regions had their own distinct culture, making them very unique from each other. I want to keep that within the new map, but something I want to avoid is the feeling of a video game map. Don't get me wrong, I love video games and playing and exploring their worlds. I'm just saying that when you view some video games or even fantasy maps in general, you can easily see a desert area, a snowy area, and a plains area, a volcano, and a mysterious island. I'm not saying that it's bad by any means. It's popular to have a map design like that because it works for the story they're telling and the world they're in. Personally, having a map like that doesn't really work for the story I'm telling. Viewing the map that I previously made for Exodus, you can see that it has those elements of a video game map. I also feel that I've outgrown that art style a bit. Needless to say, it was overdue for a map update. While it's just a sketch, here's a view of the new map design I have. Keep in mind that this is a rough prototype and I already have in mind to change the size and positioning of some islands. But for the most part, this is how the new map looks. For this new map, I wanted each region to have a purpose and correlation with each other. The 2 biggest changes I made was substituting some of the previous regions for 2 other cultures and stories. At this moment, I don't have proper names for these new areas, so let's just go with the names that these areas are inspired by. The first region I added was Ireland. The story of this area was told in the previous video, but to summarize it, Ireland was ruled under a prosperous kingdom surrounded by a beautiful forest. After the king and queen became too enamored by the surrounding woodlands, they became blind to see the needs of their people. The surrounding forest overtook their kingdom, and before the king and queen noticed, it was too late. Their kingdom was overgrown. The next region I added was Russia. I wanted to explore a side of Russia that isn't really shown in the media. I feel that when Russia is brought up in TV media, especially Western media, there's always painted as villainous or antagonistic force. Instead, I want to experiment with a more indigenous Russia, filled with traveling nomads and monasteries. I don't want to go so far in depth with the stories of these regions that I've changed, since I want to save that for a future video where I break down each region and explain their story in a more finalized version. For now though, let's talk about another change I've done to Exodus: spirits. Let me clear up the air though. I think a lot of interpretations come to people's mind when they hear the word spirits. The spirits in the world of Exodus are inspired by Avatar: The Last Airbender and Studio Ghibli. The spirits in those worlds introduce an element of blue and orange morality that drives the world building forward in a compelling way. Blue and orange morality describes a morality system that seems utterly alien by typical standards. A character with blue and orange morality might act in a way that is unusual, unpredictable, or hard to understand in human terms. This does not always mean they are evil or that their moral framework doesn't exist. Credit to Google for this definition. Let's see how this applies to Studio Ghibli and Avatar. The way that Avatar: The Last Airbender introduces spirits in the original animated show is truly compelling. Their designs reflect what they do or where they live. The series shows how otherworldly they are by making them speak and think in a completely different way from the main characters. Another way that makes spirits unique in Avatar is the way they are linked to the physical world. The episode introducing Heibai, the panda spirit, portrays them as a monster from the forest, how the people from the village have gone missing due to Heibai. As the episode goes on, we learn that the spirit is mad because the forest that it lived in was burned down by the Fire Nation. Seeing this direct correlation between the spirit world and the physical world is what makes the spirits in Avatar truly unique. But it's not just the portrayal of spirits in Avatar. The way the authors wrote the story in a show-don't-tell manner really drove the feeling further. To explain, show-don't-tell is the technique authors use to add drama to a novel. Rather than telling readers what's happening, authors use this technique to show drama unfold on the page. Telling is factual and avoids detail, while showing is detailed and places the subject at the center of the drama. Credit to JerichoWriters.com for this show-don't-tell definition. You can see this technique being used in countless Studio Ghibli movies like My Neighbor Totoro, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, and especially Spirited Away. Although the movie Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind doesn't have spirits, instead the movie has grotesque bugs and insects. The story is told through a dystopian world where an apocalypse leaves the land inhabitable and births a toxic jungle housing monstrous insects. The main character, Nausicaa, repeatedly keeps the peace between nations of man from destroying the toxic jungle. As the story progresses, we learn that underneath the contaminated water, poisonous spores, and polluted soil lies new and clean filtered water. The trees atop the soil have absorbed the pollution of man, petrifying the wood, and as they crumble, they create a way for new water to emerge. This clean water beneath the toxic jungle is protected by the Omu, giant cockroach-looking insects that were mutated due to the apocalypse of man. These Omu are intelligent enough to understand that the toxic jungle is necessary to the survival of the world, despite man trying to eradicate it. The talking points within this part of the video were aided by the video essay made by Geek Critique titled Nausicaa and the Rise of Studio Ghibli, the Director Project. Many thanks to that video, and I highly recommend you guys watch it because it brings up a lot of great points made by the movie. Thanks again to Geek Critique. As we can see, the insects from Nausicaa and the spirits of Avatar both embody a blue and orange morality, acting out in ways that humans would find confusing or antagonistic. It's through time that we realize they act the way they do by viewing the world from their eyes. This paired with a show-don't-tell technique combined to create a truly comparative This paired with a show-don't-tell technique combined to create a truly compelling narrative and arc. These stories have created such immense ripples with their respective genres, inspiring many others. I hope that implementing these changes to the world of Exodus will make the stories I have to tell more compelling and engaging for the viewers and readers alike. On the topic of engaging storytelling, I want to talk about another big inspiration of mine when it comes to Exodus. Recently, I've been playing a game called Hollow Knight, a beautifully illustrated world taking place in a forgotten kingdom. The way the game communicates its story through experiencing your surroundings instead of exposition really immerses you. From the moment the music starts with the ambient winds in the background, you're immediately sucked into this forgotten world. As you venture through the labyrinth that is the Hollow Nest, pieces of history start emerging, but in a way that feels melancholic. The people of this world speak as people who are simply trying to make it through this grim world. Others speak as if they understand the deeper meaning of hollowness, while others know the deeper meaning of the Hollow Nest. This game has sprouted my curiosity more than any game has, simply due to their self-restriction of telling you the story. The player experiences this narrative through soft world building. Soft world building is a technique used by writers to progress the story through experience and immersion instead of hard exposition. You can see this happening in Spirited Away by Studio Ghibli. You're experiencing and learning more about the external plot and story as the main character, Chihiro Ogino, sorry if I pronounced it wrong, is progressing as a character. Soft world building thrives off of character-driven stories and the character itself. I want to tell my story through a soft world building approach for the reader, but at the same time I want to have a stable world that feels lived in. I find that adding spirits to my world would create a good balance between them because it introduces moral ambiguity and internal conflict within the character. Now that we've brushed up on the changes that were made to Exodus, let's get to the main topic of this video, the Feng. The Feng faced a lot of changes due to the development of Exodus. Before we explore those changes, let's talk about how they were originally. At first, the Feng were obnoxious, ambitious, and prideful. To show this, I designed their clothing to be very rambunctious and over the top. When I was designing the Feng, I was heavily inspired by the capital from Hunger Games. The capital's fashion includes very colorful, strange, bizarre fashion that illustrated their out-of-touch attitude with the other districts. I also wanted their pride to be the main downfall of their society. The Feng were an antagonistic force who were deceived by a malicious figure to obtain technomancy, a type of magic powered by iron that would allow them to create immense technological advancements. This technomancy attracted a lot of attention from around the globe. They hosted outstanding festivals and performances. This technomancy allowed them to be great, but at a price. This magic used to power technomancy was dark. The more the Feng used this magic, the more their soul would get corrupted. It got to a point where the Feng ran out of iron to power their technomancy. The people that once adored them turned their back on them, fueling a fire at the hearts of the Feng. They found an abandoned iron mine beneath the caves of Prohelia. Desperate for this iron, they attempted to come to an agreement with the Chancellor of Prohelia. As the agreement fell through, the Feng continued to pursue the iron. This started a heated battle between Prohelia and Guoling, sparking an everlasting war between the two, with the fellow regions getting caught in the crossfire. While this story can be compelling and engaging in another instance, it's just not quite right for the direction that I want to go for. This story of the Feng holds very clear good and evil sides where the line that crosses over is quite easily seen. With this new and improved story of the Feng, I want to tell a narrative that is conflicting for the reader. To do this, the story cannot have strong good and evil sides. Instead, it has to be focused on the decisions made by the characters and how that is reflected on the Feng society. Now that we know what the Feng used to be, let me introduce you to what the Feng are now. Instead of being an obnoxious society inspired by the Hunger Games capital, the Feng are modeled after the Tang dynasty, a dynasty which was founded by the Li family who seized power during the fall of the Sui dynasty. The Tang dynasty was led by Li Taizong, a wise, respectful ruler and a good military strategist who was open to embracing new science and technologies. The Tang dynasty prospered off of trading and economics. The abundant trading roads and canals allowed their population to thrive. The Silk Road, being one of the main trade routes for the Tang dynasty, allowed for people to migrate and bring in new religions. These new religions advanced mathematics and medicine. Due to this, academies were able to open within the Tang dynasty. These academies brought in and attracted people who learned and often stayed in China, further growing the population of the dynasty. After a battle between nomadic tribes, the Guk Turks, the Tang dynasty won, allowing for their borders and population to grow. This victory allowed for military bases to be stationed from Korea to Central Asia. Silla, one of the three main kingdoms of Korea, allied with the Tang dynasty in wars and later unified with China, further growing the Tang dynasty. For centuries, the Tang dynasty held large parts of Central Asia, and their expansion to the west reached its peak in the middle of the 8th century. This will soon not be the case. In July 751, a devastating battle between the Abbasid armies was the beginning of the end for the Tang dynasty. A battle that was lost due to the betrayal of Karluk mercenaries. This led to the dynasty losing power over Central Asia, knocking it off of balance. This loss of stability sprouted rebellions and the eventual decline of the Tang dynasty. Inevitably, the dynasty broke apart into smaller states. Obviously, there was a lot of other events that happened between this, but I do believe that these were the main key moments. If I've missed anything or I made some mistakes, please list them in the comments. I would love to hear the feedback from you all. With the new changes made to Exodus, I feel that this story fits in better with the main narrative. Taking core moments from the Tang dynasty like trading, population growth, unification of kingdoms, opening of academies, and introduction of religions, and taking that and implementing that to Exodus would make for a better story. Treating the Feng as a civilization and as people instead of villains or antagonists when making the story leaves room for a lot of interpretation. As the story goes on, the character within Exodus go through different experiences. These experiences can shape their own identity and perception. This perception can paint the Feng as villainous or virtuous. At the end of the day, it's driven by the character's story and experience. This, I believe, makes for a good story. Thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed, and if you want to see more of me, I have a link tree that is found in my channel bio that'll take you to all the places that I'm on. I have a portfolio which you can see my art in with more depth into it, and I also have a store that is all found in my link tree. So if you want to support me, the store is where to do it. I hope you guys enjoy this video, and I'll see you next time. Bye!